The whole purpose of this breakdown comes from Obama and others who are conspiring to block Glass-Steagall in order to bring in a complete destruction. The next thing will be bail-in. This is a preparation for bail-in. We have enough confirmation of that we should say that and say it publicly. The whole purpose of the way that Obama and the Republicans got together on a scheme was to lead to bail-in as a way of stopping Glass-Steagall.
What is the true story of the government shutdown? Is it the volleyball between Democrats and Republicans? Well, I'm here to inform you that it is the result of an executive and congressional leadership delegation that refuses to acknowledge what is the actual solution. Why? They are loyal subjects of the Wall Street system. As long as they, with emphasis on President Barack Obama, are allowed to dominate the debate under Wall Street terms, the breakdown of the United States as a functioning social and economic system will not cease, but worsen. That is, the scheme in Washington is to remove all talk regarding reinstating Glass-Steagall.
And that includes strengthening.
As you just heard the remarks by Lyndon LaRouche, several well-placed Washington, D.C. sources confirmed between Saturday and Friday to members of the Executive Intelligence Review staff that the subject of President Barack Obama's meeting with the top CEOs of Wall Street banks on Wednesday, October 2nd, was that Glass-Steagall must vanish from consideration. Rather, quantitative easing must maintain its $85 billion injection into their gambling investment houses without tapering, and meeting the October 17th debt ceiling deadline is to maintain their investment houses with liquidity. So, while the president refused to entertain an immediate negotiation talks with the House and Senate leadership to prevent and remove the shutdown, he made adequate and expedient time available to meet with the core cause of every bit of economic decay in the United States, to discuss how to prevent reinstatement of the very policy that serves as the vehicle out of what culminated over the years to what people experienced this week as the government shutdown. If it hasn't sinked in, the intention is to get rid of you. 9 million mothers will not be receiving food for their children under the WIC program under the current circumstances. But what is that to Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan? 800,000 government workers are in furlough, and Capitol Police are without pay. But what does it matter to Goldman Sachs? They are out to preserve their system, and their concern is to maintain it, not only with quantitative easing, but with the powers granted them under Title II of the Dodd-Frank Bill, to confiscate the funds held in their accounts via pensions, secured and unsecured depositors. Whatever you thought was yours, they have the right to claim belongs to them. As Jeffrey Steinberg wrote, this week, the 11 largest U.S. banks submitted their living wills to the Fed and FDIC. In each case, the big banks swore that they were bailout-proof under the worst of financial crises due to vast reserves of cash and easily liquidated securities they are sitting on. Clearly, Jack Lew and the Treasury Department are not so sanguine. The Treasury alert about the consequences of a federal government default warned that even a brief default would cause a freeze of credit markets, a collapse of the dollar, and a spike in interest rates. All the ingredients of a systematic breakdown far worse than 2008. In addition, the scheme to loot and protect their international monopoly was again revealed by Christine Lagarde, managing director of the IMF, who stated in an interview with the New York Times October 4th, "In the midst of this fiscal challenge, the ongoing political uncertainty over the U.S. budget and the debt ceiling does not help. The government shutdown is bad enough, but failure to raise the debt ceiling would be far worse and could very seriously damage not only the U.S. economy, but the entire global economy. So it is mission critical that this be resolved as soon as possible." If the government is to reopen and serve as a vehicle to protect the rights and life of the American inhabitants, it is not a matter of negotiations. It is a matter of Congress deciding to break the chains of Wall Street over the nation's economy and letting them shut down. Glass-Steagall is the first step to go in that direction, but ultimately more will be needed, and that is the topic of LPAC in action for this week. As Congress held its week-long circus, LaRouchePAC continued its drive for the full Glass-Steagall program, the real discussion that is needed in Washington, D.C.
But the other part of conservation is the newer part, and that is to use science and technology to achieve significant breakthroughs, as we are doing today, and in that way to conserve the resources, which 10 or 20 or 30 years ago may have been wholly unknown. So we use nuclear power for peaceful purposes and power.
Michael Kirsch of the LaRouchePAC science team addressed an activist conference call of around 250 people, giving the full Glass-Steagall program as it would apply to the vision of John F. Kennedy.
By looking at what the world would look like under Kennedy, and that may sound a little strange, but if you look at the process that he was creating and what the world would look like if that process had continued, it demonstrates the identity of every single person on this call and the identity of the general American population. I say specifically the identity of the general American population and the world, because every single crisis, every single employment and every single situation that we find ourselves in is a result of that process failing. We would all be doing something entirely different had that process continued. We would be a completely different human species. And in fact, what John F. Kennedy was doing was only comparable in magnitude, quality, and dimension to the kind of transition we see in the evolution of life, the evolution of the dinosaurs to the mammals, these different periods in history of the Earth. Because this man could be also described as the nuclear president, fully bringing into being in a non-war, we had Roosevelt in a war, and in a non-war situation, fully bringing into being the potentials that were not yet unleashed of splitting the atom, but fully bringing into being also the national economy perspective of uniting all of the states as in one country.
And third, as is well known here at Hanford, we must hasten the development of low-cost atomic power. I think we should lead the world in this. By 1967, 68, 1970, in the Northeast United States, where power rates are nearly double yours, we're going to find atomic power increasingly competitive. And by the end of this century, this is going to be a tremendous source. Our experts estimate that half of all electric energy generated in the United States will come from nuclear fission. These are the things we must do and many more. This great rich country of ours has a long unfinished agenda, but it's always had that agenda in creative times. And this is a creative time in our country and throughout the world. All of the trained and educated men and women who are making our country over, who are building a better standard of living for our people, this is a time when we wish to encourage that release of energy, human energy, which is the most extraordinary of all. And therefore, I'm proud to come here across the United States as President to express our thanks to you, to express my pride in what is being begun here today, which puts the United States, as I said, once more in the lead in a whole new area which can mean so much to people around the world. And I think it's very appropriate that we come here where so much has been done to build the military strength of the United States and to find a chance to strike a blow for peace and to find a chance to strike a blow for a better life for our fellow citizens. This is a great national asset.
21st Century Science and Technology magazine's latest release covers in detail the proposal for the new economic platform, as it would have to be defined by achieving thermonuclear fusion. under a new orientation for the U.S., debates about what to cut will cease, and the senators and House representatives who insist will gently be swept into the Los Angeles Zoo for their safety. The discussion nationally will be of mission. What do we have to achieve? What can we discover? What new physical phenomena have we witnessed exist, and how shall we conquer control over it? Fusion brings us not only the greatest amount of energy density throughput per area cross-section over coal, petroleum, and even nuclear fission, but it introduces us into a completely different state of matter, plasma physics. A greater need to understand the influence and properties of magnets, not just by a few scientists, but as a national culture. As a consequence, plasma physics opens the door to revolutionizing our idea of natural resources. And this is a topic that was covered by LaRouche science team, All the World is a Mine.
Fusion will provide an effectively unlimited supply of power, creating the basis for a fundamentally new economy. The benefits are not limited to simply providing more power for the processes which already exist in the current system. The fusion economy creates the basis for addressing resource needs far into the future. To understand this, we must first recognize that, for mankind, resources are not self-evident. They are not self-determined, and they are not actually natural. What are often sloppily called natural resources only become resources as a function of the technology and energy flux density of the economy.
Say this paradigm takes its birth this year, this week, tomorrow even. Now visualize not only the transformation of the U.S. alone, but as it pertains to international relations affecting us mutually. Eurasia has demonstrated an intention to move in the direction just described. However, to allow a greater effect as an entirely new paradigm requires the U.S. to adopt this perspective, that is, the visions of John F. Kennedy and the late President Franklin Roosevelt. But once done, China, Russia, South Korea could be engaged as the nucleus of a new kind of world, one proper for the 21st century.
And it's in the look at what's going on internationally. This is ready to go. If we pull together the fighters in the United States, the Chinese, look at them. Despite whatever cultural problems they have the view that they can change the world. And they're going to do this. They can lead with an intention. Even if they don't have the capability to do it right off, they're going to lead with an intention. With Xi Jinping announcing to Southeast Asian countries at the various conferences that Obama is skipping because of the shutdown, because of his shutdown, Xi Jinping is speaking at these conferences and continuing the push for development. Right? There is a resolute dedication to this that is coming from those sectors. None of it is a done deal. Look at the question that came in from the Chinese scholar to Lin on the push coming to liberalize the economy in China. None of this is a done deal, but you have the seeds of everything that would be required. And they are moving forward, and they're not slowing down. Look at the Russian initiatives that were cited in the webcast, right? The 90% financing of the new Bangladeshi nuclear power plant from the Russians. You have the new agreements on Vietnamese nuclear power. The intention, the discussion right now, the creation of a commitment to a policy of a manned lunar base from the Russians. The discussion that's where we should be going. So all of this, put that together, consider that sort of intention relative to the mechanic within the highest reaches of the oligarchy. This whole discussion with, what comes out of these interviews and comments from Christine Lagarde, from Jack Lew, etc., is that they are desperate and terrified
and willing to bully towards whatever the hell they can get.
All rests on eliminating our obstacle, Wall Street. Many Americans are angry and have the right to be so. The government is dysfunctional. The consequences is a panic society, not knowing if they will eat, if they will work, forced to borrow to pay utilities, to pay their rent or mortgages. This degrades people, and they feel it. It humiliates them, and they know it. The dysfunctional government guarantees to harvest panic. Therefore, be the source of calm. Provide leadership. Speak the truth. Wall Street is the source of your woes, and your power to defeat them is by reinstating Glass-Steagall. Call the 1-800 number before your screen to figure out how you can rise from the status of a victim to the status of a warrior and preserve the interest of the United States of America for a long time to come.